Sometimes we think that the only place where things happen are in church. And ironically, today's message is about witnessing. And the reason why today's message is about witnessing is because how we live is a witness to who we are. Clearly, I'm having some technical difficulties this morning. That's the fun part about technology. Everything just froze. But really, I want us to look at Romans, and a lot of you know this verse, the 12th chapter. And I'm going to start with verse 1. And the reason why I want to start with verse 1 is because we've heard this several times. We go to Romans, the 12th chapter, and I have spoken about this many times, but there's a reason why we bring it up. Because Paul is writing to the Romans, and he's explaining something to them that we all need to hear. And it says, "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship." Oh, wait a minute. I thought coming to church was my pure and proper worship. Go ahead. You see, this is part of it. Coming to church and worshiping is part. But Paul is saying to the Romans, how you live your life is actually worshiping God. Now, some of us don't ever really think about that. We leave church and church stays right here. And we go act like we normally act, like everybody else in the world. It says after that, do not conform to the pattern of this world. Do not conform to the pattern of this world. Why does he say that? Because the pattern of this world is led by who? The devil. I know we don't like to talk about the devil. We don't want to mention it. But the reality is that all the things that we conform to in this world, whether they are politics, economics, or divisions, all the things that come up are of this world. Paul says, don't be conformed to this pattern, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. Anybody know what the will of God is? I guess nobody reads their Bible. Okay. Love one another. There are two great commands. Jesus was tested. So what are the greatest commands there? Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your might, all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. I always thought of them as 3 commands because some of us don't love ourselves too much. So we have trouble loving our neighbor and loving God. But the reality is, that's how we're supposed to live our life. I know this might hurt, but you don't really get brownie points for coming to church. You know, you don't get brownie points. I'm sorry. I don't want you to be deceived. The reason why we come to church is to learn about God's word. It's to worship. It's to give of ourselves. It's to encourage one another. And I bring this up because we just went through a whole section of the book, the letter of James. We call it the book of James. But the first thing that James is talking about is this thing that we have called the tongue. And it's always wagging, and it's always getting us into trouble. And the reason why he brings it up is because a lot of times we say something and we do the opposite. And so when people walk by and they say, "Oh, I thought that guy was a Christian." "Well, I thought that lady was a Christian." They say they're a Christian. Why are they doing that? Now, don't get me wrong. We all have our weaknesses. We all fall. We all have our moments. But what Paul is talking about is not being conformed to the pattern of this world, where it becomes a habit, where your reactions and your patterns are exactly like everyone else in the world. So you do something to me, I'll get you back. That's the world's economy. God's economy is what? I die on the cross and I forgive you. We're not used to that economy. We don't like to live in that economy because it's easy for us to witness what's in the world. We see it all the time. We hear it. We are watching it constantly in social media, and the news, and everywhere else. We're seeing what the pattern of the world is. And so we become just like everyone else in the world. What's the first thing that anybody tells you when you say, hey, would you like to come to church? Anybody? Anybody have a reaction? Or maybe I'm the only one that gets this reaction. Oh, they're a bunch of hypocrites. People always trying to control you and take your money, and they're hypocrites. They say one thing and do another. Paul is not talking about the occasional slip-up. What Paul is talking about is a pattern of constantly finding the standard of the world instead of the standard of God. So how we live our life becomes a witness to what we say we are. If you say you're a Christian, that means you're a follower of Christ. If I follow Christ and I lose it on the road, and that's a pattern that I have every day when I go to work, or when I even come to church, or when I leave church for that matter, then there's something wrong. There's something wrong. I'm not getting it. It's not getting through to me. You see, that's part of the problem. We have to renew our minds. You know that Jesus, out of all the things that he talked about going out and doing what? What did he say? Go out and make converts. Oh no, he didn't say that. Actually, it doesn't say that in the Bible. It doesn't say go and make converts of everybody in the world. You know what it says? It says go and make disciples. Anybody know what a disciple is? It's a student. But we have a distorted idea of what student is because we go to a school system, and I know there's a few teachers that have been here in the crowd here, and we have a very distorted idea of what a student is. See, in that Eastern philosophy, you could say, in those days, if you were a student, you literally were studying how to become like your master in every way. Not just learning some mathematics and I go on my way, learning a little history, I go on my way. You were living with this person, understanding what they meant, understanding how to live your life. Why? Because eventually, you become the witness. You become the witness. Now, we have a little bit of that. When you have a great teacher, what happens? You learn something, you get good grades. It's a reflection. It's a reflection.